happens to be Shabbat project this Shabbat, Parshat Vayera worldwide. So I thought we'll do a special edition over here and speak about the Bakashot. What is a Bakashot, first of all? These are, well, you could say Shirata Bakashot, you could pronounce it different ways. It is, let's just say, a collection of supplications, songs, and prayers that have been sung by the great Sephardi sages, especially from Syria, Morocco, Turkish Jewish communities, for centuries, each Shabbat mornings from the early hours, let's just say, of the morning until dawn. They are usually recited, especially during the winter time period, especially between the festivals of Sukkot till Purim, when, let's say, especially the night period at that point in time are much longer. The Bakashot services can last, let's say, for 3 to 4 hours respectively. And the famous Ada synagogue, which we've spoken about and visited on this channel in Jerusalem, is the center of the Syrian practice today. The communities, especially in Ashdod and in Montreal, are the center of the Moroccan practice. So it's interesting. The custom of singing Bakashot originated actually in Spain towards the time of the expulsion, but took, let's say, increased momentum in the Kabbalistic circles in Tzfat, especially in the 16th century. Now, Bakashot probably, let's say, evolved out of the tradition of saying petitionary prayers before dawn and was spread from Tzfat, the holy city, by the followers of Rabbi Isaac Luria Ashkenazi, the famous Ari Kadosh. When the spread of Tzfat Kabbalistic customs, I believe they came with the doctrine and the consumption of coffee consumption, which allowed devotees to stay awake throughout the night, singing of Bakashot, which countries all around the Mediterranean, and would become, I think, customary in the communities of Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, Rhodes in Greece, Yugoslavia, Egypt, Turkey, and Syria. It also influenced the Kabbalistically orientated confraternities, let's say, especially in the 18th century, especially in Italy, and even in Sephardic communities in Western Europe, such as in Amsterdam, obviously in the Netherlands, and in London, also in the United Kingdom. In Amsterdam, the Shabbat services, I believe, still do begin, even to current day, with a small number of Bakashot. Now, in London, the tunes for one or two of them have been preserved, I believe, in the literature, but the practice, I don't know if it still necessarily exists in itself over there. By the time of the 20th century, Bakashot had become a widespread practice in several communities in Jerusalem as communal form of prayer. It did. Now, in communities such as in Aleppo, in Syria, in Turkey and in Morocco, the singing of Bakashot expanded to vast proportions. In those countries, special books were compiled, naming the tunes and makamat, together with a text of the hymns, in order to facilitate the singing of Bakashot by the congregation. In these communities, it was customary to rise from bed in the night on Shabbat in the winter months, when the nights are longer, obviously, naturally, and assemble to the synagogue to sing Bakashot for, I believe, 4 hours until the time period of the morning. Each country had its own collection of Bakashot. And I think there's often little or not much overlap, let's just say, between the collections of different countries. The Moroccan collections is known as the Shir Yedidot, I think Marrakesh in 1921. Unlike, I think, the Aleppo tradition, where the Bakashot service, I think, is the same every single Shabbat. So there's no, let's just say, rotation over there. The Moroccan tradition has a different set of Bakashot for each and every specific week. The Amsterdam in Netherlands is set out in the first part of someone named Joseph Gallegos, Imre Noam, and the contents of this were probably, I believe, delivered from the Salonika tradition, I believe, in Greece. Now, the Turkish tradition was a Turkish tradition over there. The equivalent tradition is known as Shirat HaMaftirim. So what is this? Shirat HaMaftirim, I believe, is known as, let's say, as the songs are performed by choirs of Maftirim. The music and style are singing and based on the Sufi and Ottoman classical music. The tradition, I think, flourished in Adrianople. Obviously, this is current day Edirne in European Turkey, as well as in Salonika and in Istanbul from the 19th century until the beginning of the 20th century. Now, a rabbi of the name Rabbi Abraham Danon attested, I believe, to the Adine, Adrianople Maftirim tradition, I think, in let's say this specific source, which we'll just bring down here using Wikipedia as a source, from the 1920s. And the institution for which these songs were intended is a choir called maftirim, who are the singers or assistant cantors from ancient times. That this was the custom in Adrianople each Shabbat morning before the prayer, and in recent times they shift to time of the Shabbat Eve. Now the Levite disciples gathered at a Portugal synagogue and sang with their throats songs to praise the Lord, and after each one walked to his synagogue, which were 13 in number, before the great fire, where the opening prayer, Baruch Shema, did not start before the ending of the Kaddish by the Maftirim. In the course of time, the cantors joined with the Levites' assistants, also known as a Mezamerim, and they would sing together songs to the joy of the listeners, and gathered around them, who were avid for the songs, and they opened their mouths as if they wanted to swallow rain. This is the reason the majority of Jewish inhabitants in Adrianople had some expertise, let's say, in the art of song, because since their youth they were educated on the laps of music. And quoting, continued quotation, I heard that the refugees who flew from that city due to the war moved to Constantinople, where they re-established the gathering of the Maftirim at the Galata prayer. Now, I think both in Edine and in Salonika, this Maftirim would sing a fasil for each Shabbat in a different makam. The Maftirim would begin with a prayer, I think in Aramaic, Boresh, Orman Nuta, I believe, followed by vocal improvisations of various different Torah pasukim. Finally, the service would end with Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbat, and then naturally the Kaddish or afterwards. The definitive edition of the Pakashot and Piyutim, I think in the Ottoman Turkish tradition, was published actually in the year 1926 by someone named Eliyahu Navan, with the help of the Chazan, Rabbi Chazan Abraham Behor Papo. I think this tone, Shirei Yisrael Be'eretz HaKedem, contained up to 500 piyutim, organized according to 39 makema, including obscure and compound maklama. Now, some of the makamla, I think especially this modern Turkish vernacular, I think spelling, include, let's say, Rast, Duga, Sega, Husseini, Akem, Masirin, Mahur, Mukuyar, Nihabnat, Neva, Saba, Hikaz, Uzam, and Usak. Interesting enough. Now, what was the Moroccan tradition? The standardized Moroccan bakashot were organized according to the Andu Lassian Makam system, I think the Nuba, and as follows. First of all, the Ramal al-Maya, the Al-Hijaz al-Mashriki, the Al-Lisbihan, the Ar-Rast, the Al-Iraq al-Ajam, the Al-Hijaz al-Kabir, the Rast ad-Dil, and then afterwards Al-Usak, and then it's followed by the 9th one, the Garibat al-Hussein, and the 10th one is Al-Maya, and the 11th one is Al-Ishtlal. Now, I believe it's interesting enough, a handful of compositions are from the period of the Golden Age of Spain, including the works of the great famous Rabbi Solomon ibn Gabriel, who we've got to speak about. He was a great rabbi, 11th century Jewish poet, philosopher, published over 100 poems, I believe. Interesting enough. Another one, Rabbi we've spoken about various occasions last couple of days, Rabbi Abraham ben Meir ibn Ezra, another great biblical commentator and philosophers of the Middle Ages. He was actually born in Tudela, Taifa, or Zaragoza. Another one, Moses ben Ibn Ezra, Rabbi Moses ibn Ezra. He actually passed away, I believe, in the year 1138. He was also a linguist and a poet. Very interesting enough. And another one, famous Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, who was Judah Halevi, you could say, was a Sephardic Jewish poet, a physician, and a philosopher, known as one of the greatest poets, let's just say, in Jewish history without that, and is celebrated not just for his religious poems, I believe also for his secular poems. It is stated over here, so that's very, very interesting. So those are some of the rabbis, and I think the Shir dots, some of them are composed by another great rabbi, Rabbi Israel Najara. He, I think, lived between 1555 to 1625. And later composers from the 18th century include Rabbi Yaakov ibn Sur, I think he passed away in 1753, and Rabbi David ben Hassin, who lived between 1727 to 1797. He was a famous, let's say, Jewish Moroccan poet. I don't know if we spoke about him yet inside the series, but he would definitely make his mark, let's just say, and his brilliance within regards to his vocal skills that has to be accredited. Now, it continues over here. Although the bakashot are organized by the weekly Torah portions, the themes of the piyut range from Shabbat and Jewish holidays, such as, for example, Purim to Tzion and Kabbalah. Some of the piyutim are in Judeo-Arabic. As a whole, the Moroccan bakashot represented close to 8 centuries of Sephardic poetry and music, so you can see the importance about it. One of the first printed collections of Andalusian bakashot were arranged by a rabbi named Rabbi Abraham El Malia from Mogador in 1856 and named Shabbat Smachot. This was a collection of all the old, let's just say, manuscripts of bakashot and piyutim, as well as original compositions. Another collection, I think, was called the Roni Ve Simhi, and this was published actually in 1890 by another famous rabbi, Rabbi David Yefala, who he was also from Mogador, with many additional piyutim assembled from manuscripts. Come with the year 1921, a group of prominent Moroccan chazanim standardized the structure of the bakashot into his modern form. These included the famous Rabbi David Yefala, Rabbi David El-Kayam, and Rabbi David Afriat. All of them were from Essaouira, another famous place, and also the famous Rabbi Chaim Attar from Marrakesh, one of the great rabbis of his time. Now, the first volume, I believe, contained older piyutim, which was called Shir Yedidot, which we mentioned about before, while the second volume contained newer compositions, which was called Keter Kohuna. Many editions of Shir Yedidot were subsequently, I believe, published in the years 1931, 1979, also 1999. I don't know if there's been a more recent one. And let's speak now about the Syrian tradition over here, the importance of it over here. Friends, anyone joining in, we're exploring about bakashot. So now in Aleppo, in Syria, the custom, I believe, goes back as many as 500 years. Most of the community would rise at 3 a.m. to sing bakashot and to listen to the voices of the famous chazanim, the payatanim, and the meshorerim. When they arrived at Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbat, they would break to listen to a sermon by one of the rabbis who discussed the Torah weekly portion. When he concluded, they begin Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbat and sing all the rest of the bakashot. Now, the Syrian tradition was introduced by Jerusalem by someone named Raphael Altaras, who came to that city from Aleppo in 1845, and he founded a bakashot circle at the Kehal Zion synagogue. In this way, the custom of bakashot became part of mainstream Jerusalem's Sephardic tradition. Another important influence was another famous rabbi, Rabbi Yaakov Ades. He lived between 1857 to 1925. He immigrated to Israel, I believe, in 1895, introduced the tradition to the Persian and Bukharian communities. The main center of the tradition, I think today, is actually in the Ades synagogue in Nachlaot, where the leading spirit, I think recently, was Rabbi Chaim Shaul Abud, if I'm not mistaken. Now, the Aleppian bakashot did not only reach Jerusalem. The Jews of Aleppo took the custom with them wherever they went, especially to Turkey, Egypt, Cairo, Mexico, Argentina, and Brooklyn, New York. Each of these communities preserved this custom in the original Halabi style, without all the changes, let's say embellishments, that had been added to the bakashot by the Jerusalem cantors over the years. Although those communities did not perform the bakashot on a weekly basis, nevertheless they used these melodies, the bakashot, throughout Saturday morning prayers. Now, different themes, let's just talk about over here. Anyone, you're new on the channel, welcome. There is a total of 60 songs in the Syrian bakashot, and the collection is regarded, I think, as closed, unlike the general body of Pizmonim, where new Pizmonim are still composed for each occasion. Each song is shown with its makam, but they follow a fixed order of recitation, which does not depend on the makamat of different songs. There are many sections within the bakashot. The sections are separated by different biblical verses to be chanted in a different makam. Now, the songs principally consist of the praise of God, songs for Shabbat, songs of longing for the Holy Land, and so on, and include some piyutim also they do, taken from the main body of the prayer work. These songs are considered most ancient and sacred than other pizmonim. Many other songs contain acrostics also, identifying the author of the specific composition. Okay, so there's different steps, let's just say, and different songs. So the Bakashot itself are full of mystical allusions and traditions. Some of the songs contain references to some of the most sacred Jewish traditions. I think Song 1 to 34 lists the 10 Sfirot in the Kabbalah. Song 2 refers to Zion. Song 6 and 7, a strong stanza within regards to Boker, morning. Number 9, a song stanza ending with the Yom, the day. Song 14, Yasad Besodot, discusses many different Kabbalistic concepts and how God created the world with his divine, let's say, instruction. The next one, Song 15, Eres Varon, discusses the 7 days of creation using one stanza for each day. Another one, famous one we all know, Kiesh Mir Shabbat, a well-known song, I think, from the community, is written by Rabbi Avram ibn Ezra. Now, Yom Se Yisrael is a song by Rabbi Isaac Luria, apparently. Very interesting. Number 33, I think Song 33 contains allusion to each of the 4 Amidah services Shemona Esrei recited on Shabbat. Bakashot are interrupted after Song 34 to sing Psalm 82, the Psalm of Shabbat, one verse at a time, using a different makam for each. I believe there are many other verses of the Psalms scattered throughout the different songs, called Petikot, to serve as markers. Unlike the Bakashot themselves, these are renowned by the Chazan or by the elder people as a mawal, or non-rhythmical solo cadenza. Okay, so now Song 26 is on Shalom Vatzedek, another one written by Rabbi Shlomo Laniado. Interesting enough. It is certainly be. This contains 19 blessings, alludes to 19 blessings of Shemona Esrei. Song 39 and Song 40 is in Aramaic by Rabbi Yisrael Najjar. Ani Asaper discusses the laws of Shabbat. Mahalala, it's refers to the 7 heavens mentioned in Kabbalah. Then Song 46 contains references to all composers of the Bakashot. And 51, the halachot of Shabbat, is something that's important within regards to that song. And the Bakashot service concludes with Adon Olam, also that's Song 66, followed by ancient Kaddish prayer, song in melody of the Makam for that specific Shabbat. Now, over here, no, it is getting a bit late now. I wanted to speak about the current singers and composers in itself. I think there's most famously Rabbi Elazar Azikiri, who passed away in 1600, Kabbalist from Tzfat, would write poems. I think the famous Yedid Nefesh, that's something we have to point out also, and various famous poems of Yom Lezei Yisrael by Isaac Handali. So that's going to be very, very interesting. So great Chachamim will compose music, especially post-12th century, including Rabbi Avram Maimon, the famous, he was famous student of the Kabbalist Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, another great rabbi, Yosef Sultan, Rabbi Shlomo Ibn Gabriel, Rabbi Yaakov Abadi, Rabbi Mordechai Levton, Rabbi Eliyahu Hamoy, Rabbi Ezra Atiyah. Just to mention a few, including Rabbi Yitzchak Ben Attar, Rabbi Yehoshua Sassoon, Rabbi David Kassin. But yeah, let's hope that will be good times in of itself later on. Okay, so we're just exploring within regards to, okay, because we have the Shabbat project, with regards to Bakashot, which is read every Shabbat. So I think other rabbis of composers of Bakashot from the Aleppo community includes Rabbi Antebi Tabush, another rabbi who's spoken about, passed away in 1919. He was a leading Pizmonim composer, and his student was Rabbi Moshe Asher, or Ashkan, or Asher's people, Rabbi Chaim Shaul Abud. Now, I think Song 46, Ya Melech Ram, alludes to the names of the Bakashot composers. And living classical composer, so the name Yitzchak Yedid, is known for his combining the Bakashot within contemporary classic writing, I believe. Now, according to Sephardi tradition, the Bakashot itself are unique in that many of the melodies were composed by pre-existing texts, and like many recent Pizmonim, where the words were composed to fit an existing and often non-Jewish melody. I think it's also believed that many melodies of Bakashot, like those of many Pizmonim, are not borrowed from foreign sources. So that's something else that we have to point out. I think we're going to leave it here tonight, friends. Thought this is thought-provocative, and thanks for watching. I appreciate it. We're a channel over here that is exploring the various different importances, history, within our sense. So we're talking about the history of music. Very interesting enough today here in this special edition, which is definitely always welcome over here. So please, everyone, join our community. Wishing you well. Take care, and thanks for spending the time for watching with us. And I really, really appreciate it. Take care, and Shabbat Shalom.